I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the prevalence of mental disorders in detention facilities. And Dr. Asma has introduced me as a psychiatrist. I'm also involved in suicide research. That is my main area of interest. And so I'm currently the president of the International Association of Suicide Prevention. Worldwide, more than 10 million people are in prison. Majority of them in the US, Russia, and China. And the highest number of people in incarceration is in the US, USA. Pakistan, I was just reading and I updated these figures from the report of that was given to us, that there are about 85,000 prisoners, whereas the capacity of all prisons combined is about less than 55,000. So there is an occupancy rate of 157,000, and I think a number of you have highlighted overcrowding as one of the reasons that lead to compromised mental health, and I totally agree with that. So Dr. Asma has touched upon the kind of mental illnesses that are there: serious mental illness, common mental disorders, substance abuse, drugs, alcohol, post-traumatic stress disorder, either because of what a person may have experienced before they were imprisoned or what has happened to that person after they're imprisoned, suicide and self-harm, and then personality disorders. Now, mental disorders in the prison, there may be people who already have pre-existing mental disorders and therefore come into the prison system, or after they are in prison, they develop compromised mental health and mental disorders. But also it's important to remember, once the person is released, they continue to have difficulties, either because of the formal mental illness they're carrying or problems they may have in adjusting to the new environment. And that can cause its own challenges. So the release does not really terminate the mental illness, but it can actually continue even after the person is released. So overall, again, this is just to put it in context, when I show whatever we know about Pakistan, is there are a number of studies globally, and this is the kind of general figures that come through, that psychosis, which is a serious mental disorders like schizophrenia, is about 4%, depression about 10 to 12%, personality disorders, which is very, very large, is 40 to 70%, alcohol, drug use, PTSD, and self-harm. So these are the kind of figures that we know globally from different studies. In countries of the low and middle income area, Nigeria, Iran, Brazil, and India, these are the figures. They vary, and they vary because depends on the type of research that has been carried out. Now, Pakistan, this is a very neglected area, as we heard. There are very few actual studies, and there is no national study that will give us a prevalence of the 85,000 or so prisoners that are there in our criminal justice system. And most of the studies that have been done are only surveying one prison. The sample size is very small, so it's difficult to extrapolate it to the whole national scene. And many of these studies are very gender specific, just looking at the women or the men, rather than both of them. But I'm going to share with you whatever we know, the studies that have been done over the last 10 years or so. So this was a study done in Rawalpindi Adiala jail, looking at 128 women prisoners. Overall, psychiatric illness was 62%, and these were the breakdown. Mood disorders is what we call depression, anxiety, and so on, stress-related anxiety disorders, and so on. In a study in Peshawar in the central prison, again they looked only at women, 64 women. And depression was 59.4%. If you consider all types of depression, from mild to the very severe. And they said the middle-aged, the one from the urban areas, low income, and who were married, had higher rates of depression than the others. A study done in Karachi, this was kind of a qualitative study, just looking at the symptoms, the most common symptoms that caused compromised mental health in only 16 women, and these were the most common symptoms: insomnia, which is difficulty in sleeping; aggression, tension; psychosomatic means that a person complains of physical symptoms, but they don't have anything physically wrong with them; and self-harm. So these were the symptoms, and they came up with this kind of association that those who were involved in serious crimes like murder, this seem to suffer more from depression. But remember, these are only women. Those who were involved in things like kidnapping, they would complain more of aggression. Those who had borderline type of personality issues, they would involve themselves in self-harm or suicide attempts. And those who were involved in street crimes, they would complain of anxieties. I don't know how they came up with, but this is what they came up from this study of a relatively small sample. A study done in Lahore in 2014 in the district jail, they looked at the psychiatric disorders in men, studying 100 men. Depression was 85%. So in Peshawar, it was about 60% in women. In Lahore, they said 85% of men had depression. And again, mild, moderate, and severe, they put them together. And the associated factors were substance abuse, using drugs, those who had suffered from childhood sexual abuse, those who had chronic medical problems, those who were involved in labor as a child, and those who had low education. So these were factors that were associated with depression. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, it doesn't say any one prison, but it just says prisons, and they were looking at suicide attempts by males who were charged with homicide crimes. So it was a very specific group, men, and of those, only those who were charged with homicide. 102 cases, and these were the number of suicide attempts these men had made while in the prison, which is almost 60%. Some of them had made more than one, but only about 10% had made only one. And these were again some of the common factors: drug abuse, poor emotional control, being victimized within the prison setup, those who suffered from nightmares, and those who had depression. Another study, which is the last one as far as the research data is concerned, is in Lahore, in a jail, doesn't name which jail. And the study, one of the few studies that looked at both men and women. So 48 cases, psychological disorders were in about 40% of these 48. And this was the breakdown: panic disorder, agoraphobia, generalized anxiety disorder, post-traumatic disorder, and depression. And these are the figures. And so the more common ones were in people who were involved in physical crimes like kidnapping and murder. So if we put all of these 6 or 7 studies together, and this is a very small number, if you put all the number of people surveyed, would not be more than 300 or 400, whereas we know the total population is 85,000. So this is what it seems to be, only from these 6-7 studies, that psychiatric disorders may vary from 40 to 60%. The most common seems to be depression, but the figures are very widely different, from 18% to 85%. Anxiety 25 to 30, self-harm, suicide attempts again from 8 to 58, depending on what you look at and what you survey. But we know very little about drug use in prisons. I mean, in a survey in Iran, for example, 70% of the sample were using opioids in Iran. And in Pakistan, the availability of drugs is as common, so I would probably think that it would be that different from Iran. So drug use we don't know. Psychosis, which is the most serious illnesses, we don't know. What is the prevalence? The cases that we heard of in Dadali and Kazalayan are suffering from very serious mental disorder, which is schizophrenia, which comes under psychosis. Post-traumatic stress disorder, we don't know. Personality disorders, we don't know. So these are unexplored areas. So overall, there are very few studies. They're very variable, the quality, the sample size. Some of them are very specific. Whole spectrum of the psychiatric illnesses. We don't have any comparison studies. What is it that make people more vulnerable to psychiatric illness, and why is it some of them don't? What are the factors? So we need studies like that. And there was no intervention. What works to help these people? So my recommendations would be that from the research point of view, it's extremely important that we screen all prisoners, not only for the health issues that when they first come into the prison system, a representative sample perhaps of 85,000 from all provinces to get a better understanding of the quantum of the mental health issues using standardized instruments. So if we develop an instrument to screen for these mental health problems and the same is used in all settings, then it will be very easy to compare the findings. But you also need to study the risk factors and the associated factors. What is it that makes some people more prone to develop mental problems while in prison and others don't? What are the differences? And that is the importance of research. And we need to develop this whole science of forensic psychiatry. We're hearing how the medical panel sits and that they are not objective and they don't give the expert opinion. It is because we don't have the science developed in Pakistan. So through education and through service and guided by research, we certainly can do a better job than we are doing right now. When you have evidence, then you can build policy and you can develop services. So evidence is extremely important. We can't just shoot in the dark. We need hardcore evidence on which to base our policies, and this is what we require. And I think this is very important, that it's not just while they are within the prison system, but also after they're released, and kind of support these people would require. And that's a much bigger challenge. And through all of this, I think it's extremely important to have a human rights approach. No matter what they may have done, these are human beings who require understanding, and a humanistic and a compassionate approach is extremely important when we're dealing with this very vulnerable group of people. So thank you very much.
Yeah.